Will the 52,000 levels of the Sensex sustain? This is a very important question that all of us as investors are asking today. Macroeconomic factors, both global and local, are surely important factors for us to consider while investing in equity and equity mutual funds. I had a chat with Chintan Haria of Prudential ICICI AMC recently about what would be some of the important macroeconomic factors that influence our equity investments. Some of them being interest rates, inflation, the liquidity bonanza that we have seen across the globe in various sectors, and various other important factors that would impact our investments. One of the reasons we have chosen ICICI Prudential AMC is because of sustainable returns in their equity mutual funds. And therefore, let's now hear Chintan.
Clearly, over the last 12 months, if we see, the world has changed compared to the last 12 years. The US Central Bank was $1 trillion in 2008 in terms of its balance sheet size. In 2020, that $1 trillion became $4 trillion. Total in 12 years, the increase was $3 trillion. In the last 12 months alone, the US Central Bank has printed another $3.5 trillion and the balance sheet size has gone to $7.5 trillion. Why this is important is because whatever happens in the monetary system in US ultimately impacts all of us in terms of the financial markets globally as well as in India. Equity inflows in the last 12 months in the global equity markets, the global inflows, touched $800 billion. This is more than the total of equity inflows in the last 20 years. So we can imagine the kind of shift that has happened from debt to equity globally. This liquidity infusion by US government in the last 12 months has obviously caused all asset classes to go up. While some people say that this liquidity infusion happened in 2008 as well, what is the difference? And that's where the big change in the world has happened in the last 12 months and likely to impact us for the next 3 years. In 2008, when the global financial crisis broke out after the US housing bubble, there were huge holes in the banking balance sheets in the US. So whatever money got printed after the financial crisis in 2008 went into filling the holes of the banks. It actually never came in the hands of people. So it did not have any inflationary impact as goods and services demand did not go up because it was actually trying to fill a hole. In 2020, when the pandemic broke out, which was a health crisis, not a financial crisis, the impact or the steroid of liquidity was to ensure that economic impact does not happen from a health hazard. And unlike in 2008, where the money went in the hands of banks, this time the money went in the hands of people. So just by way of example, in the US in the last 12 months, the loss of income in the middle and lower income group was about $487 billion, let's say $500 billion, versus a $500 billion loss of income in that bracket. The US government through the US Federal Reserve gave in $1.5 trillion in their hand. Now, typically, if I lose $500 billion and I get $1.5 trillion, especially at the lower end of the bracket, they are going to demand more goods and services. That is reflective of higher prices in wheat, maize, corn, soya, etc., which is essentially basic food items. So agri-inflation is going up globally, and the infrastructure spending, we've already seen a $1.9 trillion stimulus in infrastructure happening in US. That is also causing a big future demand in aluminium, zinc, copper, steel. So money printed ultimately has to lead somewhere, and in the hands of people, it leads to a consumption boom, which is reflective of all goods and services prices going up. In US, of course, the wages are also going up. So effectively, if you see, it is upliftment of prices of goods and services, which is essentially inflation. And this has caused the equity markets also to do well because the expected profitability of companies is going to go up both in US and India. If you look at the 2008 peak, the market cap to GDP in US was 120%. Today, it is 220%. So $45 trillion of market cap, $20 trillion, $22 trillion of GDP. And unlike in India, the US cycle is advanced in terms of they have seen tax cuts happening long back. They've seen basically their GDP growth happening. Their employment is running at practically full capacity before the pandemic. So US markets don't have scope to grow at 15% on nominal basis the way Indian markets grew. And hence US market cap to GDP at 220 to 230% is probably not sustainable in the long run. Indian part, if I see, we are at about 110% market cap to GDP. You may ask how much we were in 2008 at peak. In peak 2008, we were at about 160% market cap to GDP. We were a $1 trillion economy with a $1.6 trillion market cap at that point of time. Of course, in the last 12 years, we've grown from $1 trillion to $3 trillion. And more importantly, in the next 4 to 5 years, we are going to grow from 3 trillion to 5 trillion. And the expectation is that with 6 to 7% inflation and about 8% GDP growth over the next 2 years, we'll be growing at 14 to 15% in nominal basis, which is attracting or which is making India a very the most attractive destination as far as foreign investors are concerned.
The US markets are the mother markets and are also on an all-time high today. And many Indian investors are investing into US-based investment products to take advantage of this euphoria. Can this euphoria sustain? Now, we as advisors are very clear that the only road to alpha returns on all investments is asset allocation. Asset allocation is the key for achieving your financial goals as well as achieving alpha returns on your investments. We suggest around 5 to 7% asset allocation into US-based investments as a clear country diversification into your overall portfolio. And what is most important about asset allocation is to stick to it. Therefore, you reap the benefits of the returns of the various asset classes that you invest in.
Let's step back and see in the last 8 years, globally, interest rates have come down every year. And in most countries, at least in Europe and some countries, even Canada, etc., the interest rates are so low that most people want to move towards equities. That is how globally it is. Today, if I give you numbers, close to $13 trillion of global sovereign bonds are in negative interest rates. So think of it this way, pension industry has so much money. The US pension industry today is $30 trillion, 10 times the size of India. And then there is Japan, which is $5 trillion, UK, which is about $4 trillion. And so all these pensioners or all this pension money, so to say, has to go somewhere. And in the last 8 years, they've made a lot of money in interest rates coming down. They are predominantly in global bonds. And this global bonds or the bond market, with inflation going up, there is always a fear of bonds losing. And hence these pension funds are moving little from bonds to equity. And that means that the equity markets are getting supportive. We are seeing that trend in India as well, right? Where quality debt or let's say high quality debt or fixed income or let's say return on debt has come down so much. We were in an 8-9% fixed deposit scenario. We come down to probably 5, 5.5, 6. Post-tax, that leaves people with probably 3, 2.5 to 3.5, depending on which tax bracket you are in. So the interest rates in India have also come down while inflation is going up. So we are again in a scenario wherein equity markets have to be an allocation which will help you create wealth. Otherwise, you always run the risk of losing out on purchasing power because of higher inflation and lower yield. In other words, there is negative interest rates or negative yield on if you adjust for the inflation.
In India, interest rates are at one of the lowest levels at all times, even lower than GDP rates and inflation. And many investors are turning towards equity for better returns. And primarily, this fall in interest rates has been a key driver for many investors to shift the asset class of investment from debt to equity. Therefore, interest rates are a very important macro factor that will influence our investment decisions.
India's $6 trillion savings has only 6% in equity. we still have a long way to go, especially if we look at US, which today is where it is because 40% of US savings is in equities. So there's a long way to go. There will be volatility, but I think if we move from 3 trillion to 5 trillion, if you want to capture that, there are enough sectors which will allow us to capture that.
India is expected to be a $5 trillion economy in the next 4 to 5 years. And for us to take advantage of this India growth story, we must think long term while investing in equity. We can never think short term or below a time horizon of 5 years while we invest in equity. We must always have a 5 to 15-year time horizon while investing in the equity markets to also take part in the India growth story becoming a $5 trillion economy.
Inflationary environment has caused the so-called value sectors like metals, energy, real estate, construction, all of them to start participating in the market. If we look at last 3 years in India, which is the left-hand side of the discussion, left-hand side of the chart, it was just the top 10 names. So you have mega quality names doing well and keep on receiving all the money by investors, because practically the rest of the market was reeling under the pressure of slowdown, very, very weak economic activity, and deflationary scenario that was impacting India in the last 3 years. Maybe even in the globe, the growth was not that strong. However, if we see in the last 6 months or so, since October, maybe last 8 months, the scenario is changing. We've seen oil prices consistently go up. We've seen metal prices being supportive. We've seen real estate sales improving in India, especially Bangalore, Hyderabad, Gurgaon, Delhi. Not surprising because IT sector being the largest and IT sector doing so well. So all these pockets which were having trouble that time are now turning into a positive, and metals, which was the biggest pain area, not just for metal companies or earnings, but also for the banks, right? That is also turned. So in one scenario of last 8 months, we've seen banking system getting the booster dose, so to say, because real estate and metals have started to do well.
What should we as investors watch out for some of the pain points that is going to cause us panic regarding the stock markets? There are 3 important factors: crude prices rising, interest rates rising, and inflation rising. These are the key economic indicators that we must watch out, which could cause volatility in the markets as well as markets to correct. But the fact is that the markets are always ahead of all this news, and we can never predict when this news is actually going to impact the markets and cause it to correct.
There are 3 triggers which probably impact India the most. The first one is oil prices going above 100. The second and the most important one is when does US start increasing rates and when does liquidity go away?
Yeah.
These 2 are the questions which, if you ask me personally, when will there be a global volatility which will probably make us all feel a bit uncomfortable about equity markets? It's when US starts increasing rates and liquidity starts getting to go away. When I say behind the curve, shouldn't they already increase? Clearly, no one wants to spoil the apple cart when at a time when the economy is just about stabilizing after the health hazard, and the health hazard has not completely gone away, right? We're already seeing Australia is in a 50% lockdown virtually, running very high and leading to interest rates increasing very much. So we have, let's say, a 12 to 18 month runway as far as this liquidity rally is concerned. After that, maybe in 2023, we will see our own economy also overheating. That's a possibility. And US markets, they cannot continue the way they have. Like I said, already 220%, 230% market cap to GDP is reaching probably unsustainable levels. And only hindsight will tell us this was unsustainable. As a percentage of overall volumes, used to be about 55. That has come down to, I think, about 30, and HNI and retail volumes in India has gone up to as high as 70. We have a savings rate of 15%, which is much less than 25%, which was earlier. It is only 15% because of understandable reasons. And that means $450 billion of savings in India alone every year. today's millennials or youngsters, thanks to advent of digital technology, like you said, and more awareness, they are able to easily invest.
When the US markets smile, the Indian stock markets laugh. But when the US markets sneeze, the Indian markets catch a cold. This used to be common chatter amongst analysts and traders for several decades. And this euphoria, coupled with the liquidity bonanza and low interest rates, has surely caused all stock markets across the globe to surge. Will this euphoria sustain? We must remember that volatility is second nature to all stock markets. Markets will go up and will go down, and we cannot change this fact. But any excesses in the markets will get removed sooner than later. We must use market corrections and dips to add more money to our investments for better returns. What we need to do is to think long-term, disciplined, and be patient, and invest with the right fund managers for alpha returns.